My name is Dee Johnson and I'm a senior therapist for the Priory Hospital in Chelmsford, and I'm here today on this video to answer some questions from people in recovery about addiction and their family members. So the first question I've been asked today: can someone be addicted and still be successful, productive and look fine? Yeah, they can in the early days. There's a lot of debate about what people say is a functioning addict. Some people say there's no such thing as a functioning addict. But the reality is, for some people, before they get to that really dark place with their addiction, they can carry on for seemingly quite a long time, still showing up for life, which makes the addiction harder because there's a sense with them that if they're still turning up for work, running the house, looking okay socially, still maintaining relationships, their using surely can't be that bad. But what they're doing is managing their life around their drug of choice, whatever that drug of choice is. So they might be making sure they use it at certain times. It won't be so obvious, being secret about it, hiding it, taking other drugs to mask the effect of the main drug that you're using. So you might be on a bender with alcohol all night and you need to take some uppers in the morning at work just to get through the day. So the functionality, looking like you're showing up at work, can actually increase your drug use because you've got to swap into other things to keep you going. It's quite a common thing. If you recognise that even though you seem to be managing, still providing, still earning a living, you haven't been sacked yet, you haven't lost your license, you haven't been caught, surely you're okay. And people aren't spotting it, but that subversive stuff is going on. You know that you're having to use in secret. You know that you're using much more than other people think that you are. And it's in your head a lot, and you're battling it, and you're wondering when you can use next and when you can get away with it. Then that's the time to really seek help. Don't wait till everything explodes. So, next question. How can I explain addiction to my children? Yeah, that's a tough question and a really, really scary place for some people to be, because as much as we need to protect children from addiction for various reasons, children see it, they know. And sometimes it's really helpful to explain to a child why somebody might be very unwell. And I think the easiest thing is just to explain to them that sometimes people get a little bit stuck in their brain, and they get very unwell and they need lots of help and support. And then they look very unwell, but don't be frightened. They're getting help and it is solvable. But it's a bit like if you were given a bag of sweets and you wanted to eat them all. And even though they made you feel sick, you couldn't stop eating the sweets. And even when you were sick, you carried on eating them. So that's sometimes how adults are with addiction. They get something they really love, they keep using it, and it makes them very unwell. But the good news is they can get help for it. But making sure the child never feels any blame. Sometimes in family support groups, the child might say, is it me? Does mummy or daddy get drunk because they don't love me? Because children will have these difficult and very confusing experiences. And we just need to keep reassuring them that they're safe, they're loved, and whoever the person is around them that is the addict, that they love them too, but they're just not very well at the moment. But that the fact that they love them doesn't change, but they just need some help. Yeah, this is a great question. How do you support someone without enabling them? Yeah, and it's a fine line. When you love somebody that's got addiction, you kind of get caught up in their behavior as well. And the thing about when somebody's in the grips of addiction, because they are so frightened not to be without their drug of choice, there's behavioral traits that aren't truly them, but comes out in their addictive behavior. The manipulation, the selfishness, the control, the deviousness. But you're also petrified that as they go further and further into the illness and the abyss of addiction, that more harm's going to come to them. So you naturally panic. You want to support. So support and enabling are two very, very different things. And enabling is when you've become caught up in the spiral of their behaviour, their manipulation, their lies, their dramas, their threats. and it can be very scary for some people if your loved one is caught up in a drug cycle where they owe money to drug dealers and you want to keep paying their bills, or you think, if I don't keep paying for their gambling debts or their shopping addiction, they're going to end up homeless. So what do I do? So we keep forking out money, we keep paying for help, we keep saying yes to them because we're terrified if we don't, it's going to get even worse. And in the end, you're living on eggshells, you're caught up in their lies, you're lying and knowing you're being manipulated. That's where the enabling is. The support is where you put boundaries in. Easier said than done, because it's just such a frightening place to be and it's so emotive. But support comes from being able to say to somebody, I love you, I care about you, I know exactly what you're doing, and I'll help you in the ways I can. So that might be your daughter's asking you for money. Oh, I've run out of money, I need some money for food. And you know absolutely well it's not money they need for food. They want to go and pick up their drug of choice or buy more alcohol or put a bet on. So a way of supporting is saying, well, I tell you what, I'll buy your food, or, I'll pay that bill for you. And if they really kick off and get angry, then there's your answer. It was never intended for that purpose. But you say, I will support you, pay bills, do whatever, take you to doctor's appointments. But if you're asking me for money to just go and do it on your own, that's enabling. This kind of leads on, really. What boundaries do I need to set to protect myself when a loved one's addiction is starting to affect my well-being? You really need to start recognizing that this isn't your fault. And we talk about the 3 C's. Be aware of this when you love somebody with an addiction problem. You can't control it, you didn't cause it, and you can't cure it. But what you can do is start putting some safety behaviours around yourself and maybe other loved ones. Like, we've mentioned, stop giving them money and handouts for everything. Having to put some boundaries in, saying, no, that's not acceptable. Sometimes we've got to put some tough things in place. If you keep doing that, you can't live here anymore. I'll still love you and I'll still care for you and still stay in contact with you. Sometimes we even have to push them away for a while for our own sanity, safety and well-being. There's a fabulous saying, no is a sentence. And sometimes that's really, really important with somebody who's so desperate they'll manipulate anyone and anything to get their drug of choice. Not because they're a terrible person, it's because they're terribly unwell. And although you understand that, you've got to put your safety and well-being first, because it's all been about them for such a long time. You've lost sight of you. So therapy, support groups, talking to trusted friends, putting boundaries in, you've got to start prioritizing your well-being. How can I learn to cope with my thoughts and emotions without relying on drugs? Yeah, if you've been dependent and self-medicated on whatever your drugs of choice or behaviours are, the primary reason you've been doing this is because this life stuff over time has become unmanageable. Thoughts create emotions, and if those are very distorted and painful and scary and difficult, and in the early days of using, that recreational use turned into addictive use, because you know what? In the early days, it was a reward. It served a purpose. It dealt with the pain. It dealt with the dysregulation. It dealt with the flashbacks, the anxiety, depression, whatever it is that was going on for you. And in the early days, it kind of seems like your solution. And it kind of was. But over time, it becomes the toxic, devastating solution. That drugs then become the problem, when it was once in the early days that thing. Well, that just helped take the edge off things. What happens over time is your ability to have that emotional intelligence and self-worth to lean into the pain and process the traumas, the past, the insecurities, the grief and loss that have become unmanageable. You think, I can't do that because every time I picked up a drug and drunk or whatever it was, it took the edge off. I'm not capable of doing that. I don't have those abilities. Seeking professional support helps you learn through therapy, through psychological workshops and psychoeducation, support groups where you're with other people that had lost all that self-worth and self-esteem, and trust in yourself that you believe you're not capable of dealing with pain, dealing with upset, anxiety, trauma, even dealing with being confident. You can. Those neural pathways in your brain were there once upon a time. Neural pathways for addiction overrode them. So we can get back to building and revisiting those neural pathways that once upon a time you were that person. You're not lost, you're in there. You just got drowned with the addiction. And we get that person back and build new coping strategies and new pathways and new learnings. And it takes time and it takes nurture and patience, which when you've got an addiction problem, time, patience, and nurture are not your best things. It's not your best forte, but you learn it, you get back there. I dealt with something really painful and stressful today, but I didn't self harm. I didn't smash myself up. And you think, oh, okay, maybe I can do it. Small steps, little steps with other people supporting you. It's totally doable. Addict nature is, but I want the solution. I don't want to change it. And I want to change it now because that's what your drugs and addict behavior did for you. And that's the tough bit because you can bounce in and out of using and not using and being fearful of, am I just going to be stuck like this forever? But time, nurture, and other people's support and therapy and understanding and listening to other people who've been through it. So you get that connection of, okay, it's not just some therapist talking at me. I get it. This is actual real life stuff and other people have done it. So maybe I can too. It's not your emotions that will kill you, but as an addict, if you carry on trying to deal with your emotions through addiction, then that is the thing that will kill you. What a great question. Does struggling with addiction mean there is something fundamentally wrong with me? No, you're just not. You're not well. It's an illness. It's an acute mental health disorder that actually, with the right recognition and support, and that just you having the courage to say, I've got an addiction problem and this is destroying me and I'm not well. It's doable. It's changeable. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with you in terms of you're a bad person or you're going to be stuck like this forever. There is always hope. There is always the possibility of change. When you're in the grips of addiction, you're so full of shame and your self-worth is just on the floor. And that self-loathing is so rife. You genuinely believe you're just this worthless person, and why would anybody love or care about you? Because you don't love or care about yourself anymore. And you've probably done some pretty shameful, blameful, really uncomfortable, difficult and scary things. And it drives you deeper into that addiction. So that belief is, yeah, I'm broken beyond repair. It's kind of that addict thinking, stinking thinking, get into your head. And that keeps you trapped in the addiction. So absolutely categorically no. And there are some addictive behaviours, funny enough, that when you get clean and sober, your ability to focus, your ability to be passionate about something, you use it in the right ways. It's an absolute marvellous thing to have, but you just got to learn to use it for self-care, not self-harm. Yeah, we get asked this a lot. Is recovery from addiction about being cured or is it something different? Yeah, people come to us for help and they ask us what the cure is. And family members say, well, you've had them for 28 days, surely they're cured now. If you think about the brain and learnt behaviours, we build up neural pathways in our brains that makes us do actions automatically without thinking about them, in our daily lives. That's how we learn. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And now we've got these actions just embedded in our behaviour. And certain drugs and certain chemicals change people's neural pathways in their brain so they become physically very addicted very, very quickly. Once we've learnt something, you can't unlearn it. So it's a bit like saying to someone, you know, think about a nursery rhyme you remembered when you were very little. You might not have thought about that for 30, 40 years, but give it a couple of minutes and then you're humming it and then you're singing it and then you're remembering the words. That's because you've got an embedded neural pathway in your brain. It's gone very dusty and dormant. We've blown the dust off by saying, can you remember that? And suddenly that memory for 30, 40 years is back and quite strong because you've learnt that. Bit like you might not have ridden a bicycle for years, but you get back on that bicycle and all those neurons in your brain go, oh yeah, we remember how to do that. You've learned over years that addiction was your solution and your instant response to anything was pick up that drug, do that behaviour. It's automatic, it's schematic. You don't even think, oh, I'm really stressed out, I need a drink. You're just picking up the drink. So recovery teaches you and builds new learnings, new pathways in your brain that become stronger and override the addiction ones. But it could be that, you might be clean 15 years and something traumatic happens and the dust is blown off that addiction neural pathway and suddenly you're back there thinking, I need a drink. But because your recovery plan is there, you can kick in your recovery behaviour and your self-care and safety behaviour. So that's why some people can be clean for a long time and then really panic and say, oh, God, I had a real craving or I had a real urge to use because I just got a promotion at work and wanted to celebrate, or somebody I love has just passed away and I thought I was cured from my addiction. Well, no, those ensconced behaviours were with you for a long time. But the more you stay clean, self-caring, looking after yourself, the addictive responses become dusty and dormant, but they never fully go away. That's why we say keeping up recovery, whatever that looks like for you, is absolutely key, not to get complacent. How do you replace the role of a substance played in your life? That's a really important question. And for anyone that has been gripped by addiction, you know full well how scary that is to think, what does my life look like without my drugs of choice or behaviours of choice? And you also know there's a grieving process, and we see it regularly. There is a grieving process for that part of your life, even though it was destroying you and tearing you down and possibly trying to kill you in the end. There is a grieving process for that substance or behaviours in your life. There's a hole, and you don't know how to fill that gap, because addiction becomes 24/7. You either using it, obsessing about it, thinking about it, getting over it, coming down from it, trying to acquire it again. It's just all consuming. So when that stuff is gone and you've made that amazing decision to get help and step away from it, it's like, what on earth do I do with my time? How do I replace it? Give yourself time. And nature, addict nature is, I've got to do something else. I've got to do something else. I've got to do something else. And I'm going to rush out and join a gym and join this club and do this and do that. It's like, well, breathe, slow down, have a lot of gratitude. Every day checking in on what you've achieved, what you're grateful for, how you've taken care of yourself today, and start finding the joy in life again. Addiction robs you of everything, including the stuff that used to make you you and the stuff that used to give you fulfillment. Try not to get too obsessive over one thing, because there's your addict head kicking off, even if it's like, well, I'm going to go to the gym 3 hours a day every day. Yeah, you've lost the balance again. So sit with friends, your therapists, loved ones, your process groups, and start to discover the things that you lost in your life. But remember, you need balance. So it's not just one thing, because addicts aren't very good at balance. It's not about just replacing it. It's repairing you and your self-worth and bringing fulfillment and joy and pleasure and love and compassion back into your life. Yeah, why do I keep relapsing? And why does it often happen when things are going well? So whoever asked this, thank you, because this is such a helpful question. And it kind of ties into something that I mentioned earlier about complacency. When we feel well, we tend to stop doing the things on a daily basis or a regular basis that kept us well, because we feel well. So, it's a bit like, well, I've done all my meetings, I've done my therapy, I've connected with my support groups, I've really got, gratitude for life, and grateful that I understood that I'm an addict, and grateful what that means to me, and now I can look after myself. And because you feel so well and good, and you're not blowing up your life anymore, and you love yourself, and you're caring for yourself, why do I need to do this self-care stuff anymore? Because I'm all right. And that's where the complacency slowly starts to creep in. Family members as well, and friends, they'll say, look, you've been great. You haven't drunk for a year. Surely you can have a drink. Surely you'll be all right now because you're so well. You've got control of it. Doesn't work like that. Relapsing happens when you stop doing the things that kept you safe and well. So just do a little inventory and a little check on yourself. Have I just slacked off on whatever that is for you? Support groups, gratitude, self-care, eating well, expressing my feelings, not ignoring all the noisy stuff that goes on in my head. Have I stopped taking the medication I'm meant to take? The right medication, not the self-medication stuff that got you into trouble in the first place. But, have I stopped doing those things? Have I got complacent? Have I got a little bit kind of arrogant about it? That's why you keep relapsing, because you've taken for granted the reason why you're well. What's the best approach to take with a loved one when they first return home from rehab? It's really scary. And at Priory, we do support all the family and friends that are around our patients that we treat and care for. And we see highly traumatized, terrified people that their loved one's gone to rehab. Hurrah, brilliant, they're going to get well. They see their loved one start to get well, and they see that person return that they've lost for so long to the illness of addiction. And then they get absolutely terrified What if they relapse and we lose them again? We've just got them back, and now it's even scarier if we lose them again. And everybody's absolutely petrified. There's anger, there's hurt, there's resentment, there's pain. There's all that stuff that you are going through as a loved one that your person in addiction that struggles has put you through. They hadn't meant to. It's the illness. It's what happens. We're not condoning it or excusing it. It's just how it plays out in life. But you're now full of absolute fear, and you'll have a lot of resentments and anger you need to deal with. So best again, we've talked before, you need that mental health support and looking at your mental well-being and putting boundaries in what's right and wrong for you. It's about not falling back into old behaviour and treading on eggshells. You've spent goodness knows how long treading on eggshells around them, terrified of what they're going to do next. Don't tread on the eggshells around them when they come out of rehab. I would recommend, if you can have joint sessions with your loved one with an addictions therapist to talk through what looks safe. If you feel you need to clear the house of alcohol or devices that might have gambling apps on, or whatever their issue was, have that conversation with them. I love this question. So, thank you for asking this. How do you rebuild trust after addiction-related harm? Everything is so broken and in pain when everybody is in the grips of addiction. And it's awful. You love that person so much, but you can hate them equally as the addict, and the trust has gone. They may have gone to the depths of despair and rock bottom in their addiction, that they've done things that them themselves would never have dreamt that they would ever have done in a million years. And the trust is just devastated. The false promises, yes, I promise I'll never do that again. Yes, I'm sorry, I'll stop. No, I never did that, when you know they did. They've become somebody you don't know. And that trust takes time and nurture. And the reality is, not everybody can, and that is absolutely your prerogative and your choice. You've got to have your well-being and your safety and what's right for your life going forward as well. Trust never comes from words, because I'm pretty sure if you've been around somebody who's struggled and battled with addiction, words mean nothing. Because in their desperation and despair, the sorries and the remorse in the moment, they mean it as well, but 5 minutes later they're off doing it again until they go and get help. And words actually mean nothing to you anymore. In fact, they're probably actually quite insulting, and you're sick and tired of hearing them. Trust comes through daily actions, but trust comes through you being able to be yourself as well, and being able to have open conversations with the person who's in recovery from addiction. And it is, we say, take it a day at a time. There's a kind of a thing about making a daily amends, that both got to communicate really honestly. And sometimes those conversations can be quite painful, quite uncomfortable, but be brave about it. If you keep avoiding them and kind of minimalising it, you're all going to end up in the same place. That's part of the reason you all got into trouble in the first place. Having raw, brave, open conversations, trust isn't something that you can be told you can have. You'll just get a sense of it. And however that long is for you, if that is ever going to work for you. But it's watching their daily actions, seeing their behaviour change, knowing that you can safely challenge them if you're feeling very insecure and suddenly see that they're a bit isolated and withdrawn. That means they're using, and saying, look, I'm really worried. Can I just breathalyse you or drug screen you or check your bank account, because you've just done something that has really freaked me out? And if they're in a good recovery, they should be able to say, yeah, I know, I get it. So I've been Dee Johnson, and thank you so much for these questions. And if you'd like to find out more content and more information about this, please subscribe to the Priory channel.